All right, folks. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Erica Pellman. I am the director of marketing with the NEBPI, and that is the Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative. And I just want to welcome everyone to tonight's Butcher Block Talk. Before we get started, I just kind of want to go through a couple key items to just kind of go over as far as housekeeping rules. So let me just get that going. The chat will be enabled throughout the evening, and to use the chat box to just ask questions, you can find that at the bottom of your screen. If you just roll your mouse down, you can find those options for you. Throughout the evening, be able to converse with others. Make sure though too that you have your video on and your mic muted while we're presenting, just so that we can have clear ability to hear afterwards when we're watching the playback. Everybody can have a chance to listen in without any distractions. And then we encourage everyone to just stick around at the end for a little bit of a roundtable networking session with each other. And we're excited to have you here tonight. So before we begin, I just wanted to kind of go over kind of what that's going to look like for this Butcher Block Talk breakdown. And what we have tonight is just making the connection with the beef checkoff, curiosity, developing tomorrow's butcher. That's where we're going to have our featured speaker, Kari talk, and collaboration. And that's kind of where we're going to round out the night with a round table. So we're excited for you all to be able to connect with each other and hope you get something out of it tonight. So as I stated, I am Erica Pellman. I am the Director of Marketing with the Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative. And what my role is just connecting with retailers and food service providers across the Northeast region. My screen's working. The Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative looks to strategically market across the Northeast region just to be able to meet the needs of those folks in the food service and the retailers for my section of the Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative. We also have a consumer focus and a nutrition education focus in this region. And so what we try to do is just promote the beef checkoff within the Northeast region with promotional programs and educational opportunities. And essentially, we're a staff of 3 members that are housed within the Pennsylvania Beef Council, working on behalf of the checkoff to educate and promote beef from Maine to Virginia. So with that, the Northeast region attributes to about 14 people to 1 beef animal. So that is easy to understand due to the ratio difference. Many consumers are far removed from agriculture and essentially farther removed from the production story. The Northeast region is home to 4 of the top 10 metro cities in the country and houses over 72 million consumers in total, equating to roughly 25% of the country's population. And while we are home to 1/4 of the country's population, we receive limited checkoff funds, roughly due to the lack of cattle in the region. And 5 states actually do not have a state beef council presence, leading to opportunities to educate consumers in these states due to the lack of staff to put on the marketing promotional campaigns. So with that, tonight's talk, we are talking about how COVID has affected the butcher trade as well as the meat processors. And I just want you to take a look at the graphs here that we have listed as far as what we're seeing in the Northeast and the total US. And the Northeast within the last year has seen a dramatic change when it comes to butcher shops and meat markets as far as the interest between 2019 and 2020. And as you can see here, there was a 10% increase with the meat market and butcher shops within the Northeast. Compared to on the total US, we're seeing about an 8% increase between last year and this year comparatively, as well as when you look at the bottom mark down below, you can see that the ordering online and pickup at local has also increased for both the Northeast and the total US. And that's just kind of speaking to where people are at and what they're looking for, as we saw earlier in the year when retailers were looking to meet the needs of their consumers and they ran out due to the shutdowns at a lot of the packers across the United States. They were trying to fill the void by meeting the demands, but at times it was slow because of the way that the logistics were being handled. And so that's kind of where consumers have directed their focus away from the larger retailers and looking to where they can buy their meat local. And that's really what we're here today to talk about, is how do we meet the demand for consumers, and how do we bring to life a trade that has since been overlooked over the last couple of years. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Kari Underly, who is with Range Meat Academy, and she is here tonight to speak to you about developing tomorrow's butcher.
Okay, thank you. All right, I was obeying the rules and I muted myself and I couldn't get back in. All right, guys, let me share my screen. Okay, there's our butcher talk slide. For those of you that don't know me, I am the meat lady. I've been called worse, so I'll take it and I'll run with it. Everything that I've focused a lot of years has always been around training and education. So that's kind of been my niche. So that's pretty important. And that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about the butchery trade here today. It's something that I grew up with. I'm a third generation butcher. Both my grandmothers were butchers. Yes, both of my grandmothers were butchers. I cannot make that up. My dad was a butcher, and then my grandfather on my mom's side was a butcher. So it's literally in my DNA. I was like, really, guys? So I took a little different spin with the butchery trade. I apprenticed for 3 years. I went and worked in the grocery store for a number of years, and really was fortunate enough to have that opportunity because it really honed my knife work. And we'll talk about some opportunities in that area. So my family literally went into the meat business, lost the meat business, and this was something that I didn't think was going to come back, was the actual butcher trade again. And so my father passed away this spring, and he retired making $13 an hour raising a family, and that sticks with me. And so as I went through this educational process, I was trying to come up with a way to help meld that, where we can maybe pay somebody a little bit more money than that and raise kids. And so, how can we make getting these butchers a little more cost effective and getting them there? So I know meat, that's all I'm trying to say. All right, so we talked about COVID and some of the issues there, local meat processing expanding and some opportunities. And then also, how can we find these new butchers? And I think there's an opportunity with the displaced restaurant workers. So I know we have a couple of groups of people. So I'm just gonna do some quick stats here. This is a big industry. Over 130,000 meat cutters and butchers are employed by this segment of the industry, which is largest in agriculture. Over 6.2 million people are somehow involved in meat production, with its distribution, retail, processing. 6.2 million people. That is a lot of that our ag industry really touches. And the workforce is increasing, and we need to elevate and attract 7,200 jobs just to keep pace with the butchery world. There's over 2.7 million people who work as salary employees in grocery stores. Like I mentioned, with the knife skills, this is a great opportunity. If you're looking, if you're a butcher trying to get skills, this is a way to learn. If you're looking to find workers, I would see if we can, if you're in the meat processor and you want people that are looking to get more knife skills, we could look there. Another area is the Pro Start program. Pro Start is a program with the National Restaurant Association, and they have approximately 140,000 students that go through this culinary program every year. And those would be potential students or workforce folks. And then the average meat department sales, not sales, but their salary is about 48 grand. And those jobs vary from, you know, being a meat department manager, a quality manager, or things in the meat processing world. So those salaries move around. So are we going to hit our sales growth? We have an estimated 5% every year that we need to keep target of developing the butchery trade. 139,000, we projected just over 30,000 unopened. So we know if you're in the business, if you're a meat processor, if you're a retailer, you know that attracting help is always been challenging. It's a demanding job, and we are tight on our resources and what we can pay folks. So how are we going to move this target so we can hit it? So I wanted to talk about the different types of jobs, where they're at, and maybe where we can look to hire. So if you're somebody that's new, that's getting into the butchery field or the trade, and you want to go knock on somebody's door and get a job, chances are you're going to start kind of at the bottom of your expertise. So you got to get started. But if you're really looking to get and understand the whole total meat processing business, a meat processor is typically a place that there's a couple different formats. One does the slaughter all the way to the end cut, or sometimes they'll just pick up at the carcass and they don't do the slaughter. And we'll talk about those jobs. So, a slaughter person is a person that humanely dispatches these animals. There's all kinds of jobs throughout the production cycle. The animal goes through a carcass wash, a disassembly, and this all has to be done carefully, humanely, safely. People have jobs on the plant where they're actually taking large saws and splitting these carcasses in half and cutting them into primals. And these folks are usually called breakers. We also have people that do kind of the fine cutting work, the meat cutter. These are people who take like the large primals and break them into different sizes, like you're seeing here, and then all the way through the process. When folks get down to the steak cutter level, basically you're taking a subprimal and you're slicing it for steaks. And again, that's going to give you that repetitive night work. And then to even get started, we need folks that need to understand, what the cuts are, how to cut it, how to prepare it, and meld all that. So if you're in the grocery side of it, that would be a meat clerk. If you're in the meat processing side, that tends to be the packaging person that needs to be able to identify the cuts and put the right label and weigh everything and scale. So, this is just a basic chart of the different types of jobs that you may find in soup to nuts, I guess that's kind of a bad saying, slaughterhouse, or it's also referred to as an abattoir. If back to what Erica was saying, the butcher is what we considered somebody who brings in their smaller local butcher shops where they tend to bring in whole animals, or they'll bring in primals and things like that from the meat processors. They can either break in the back of the shop, or they'll do all their custom grinds. They'll make, excuse me, sometimes they'll do like stock, jerky, value add, processed meats, things like that. So if you're looking for a job and you can't find a meat processor to go work for, you can look for these jobs also in the smaller butcher shops, because when they are buying these larger pieces of meat, then the skills have to be developed to teach people how to do that, how to recognize what the cut is, where to know between the fifth and sixth rib, or if you're going to cheat the rib and go to the fourth and fifth to pick up a bigger ribeye, where do you do that at? So, this is a great opportunity for somebody to get into the local butcher shop. And when I mean local, yes, I do mean like local meats, but I also mean the local as in neighborhoods. So some butcher shops, do try to buy local, but as we all know, we're not alone here. Most meat processors and slaughterhouses are booked a couple years out. People can't get slots until 2022. And it's really causing I mean, we've been in this industry for a long time. We know that's been a problem, but now people, I think, are starting to recognize that this is more of a problem. And with COVID, we're starting to see where the pressure to buy a little bit closer to home and more regionalized food systems is coming into play, especially like places in New England where you do have a lot larger population base. So, you know, the butcher shop is kind of what you romantically think of when you think of a butcher shop. You know, Carrie's behind the counter saying, "Hey, can I help you?" Or Carl, as I've been called. Um, so, um, true story, my James Beard certificate came in with Carl on it, not Carrie. So funny, but it's a thing. So anyway, this is a really good opportunity, and the skills that you'll need here are similar to skills that you would learn in some of the smaller meat processing and plants. So a lot of people ask about the difference between what's a butcher and a meat cutter. Basically, the butcher is somebody that does the whole sides or the large primals, quarters of beef. But a meat cutter is the one that's usually at a grocery store. You're gonna get a lot of repetition. You're gonna get a lot of knife work. You're gonna learn your cut identification. You're gonna learn how to talk with consumers, do ordering. And what's great about cutting boxed meat, again, is just that repetition that you really get, you know, your knife work, and you feel more comfortable with a knife being an extension of yourself, I guess, as you're working through the meat. And you're going to get plenty of time cutting, portioning, trimming, and doing roast. So again, if you have folks that are looking for jobs and they're in a meat cutter at the grocery store business, and you may want somebody with more, you know, breaking, these candidates, I think, are good to bring them into the mix and see if they would fit in your business. Steak cutters, very similar to jobs that you would get at the grocery store. Steak cutters are usually large, sometimes called meat processors, where they're mainly buying ribs and loins and putting them out for sale and portioned for restaurants. So somebody might want, you know, a case of 8-ounce fillets or something like that, or New York strips, then they can go ahead and buy them. So in this kind of job, you're probably going to be cutting one piece of meat over and over and over again, and you're going to get really good at portioning. So some meat processors actually have portioning machines. Like if you send a tenderloin through it, it'll kick off a 4-ounce tenderloin this way, a 6-ounce tenderloin this way, it's cutting through and making the eye, I mean, literally reading it with an eye and doing that. But a lot of that work is still done by hand. So if you are portioning by hand, this is where you're going to get that kind of muscle memory and building that up. Versus the grocery store, those folks, you sell by the pound. A steak cutter and steak cutter processors, they're selling by the each. So, you know, you're buying a case of 8-ounce fillets versus a case of whole tenderloins that you have to cut up and sell by the pound. So how do we educate our young meat folks? So I have found that over the years, these programs have in my lifespan, I should say, I apprenticed for 3 years, like I mentioned before, and those programs have gone away with the introduction of more case-ready and boxed meats. So what happened is the skill of the meat cutter was no longer at the local butcher shop or the grocery store. That skill now went over towards the processing side. So when the meat processors cut up the meat, get it ready, if it's steak ready, grill ready, flat top ready, all that work and training and education has moved to the processor. So now that product that comes into your store is going to cost more because now you don't have to do the work, as much work, because the work has already been done at another site and being shipped in. Now, unfortunately, and I was really surprised to hear this. I thought 3 years was a long time, but there's actually 7-year apprenticeship programs. And so if you're a young person trying to get a job in Look at, I've put 7 years to year journeyman. Sorry about that. 3 to 7 years, to land this position. And I had a guy call me and says, Kari, I can't learn. How can I learn? Because it takes me 7 years that the guy next to me won't teach me because these guys don't stick around. So we have to make the education attainable because people just can't make it that long to hang on to get apprentice jobs. So it needs to be something that training is a little more interactive. It's not as cumbersome, and kind of get the butts in the seat knowledge down, and then come in and work on the apprenticeship. If you are able to get an apprenticeship job, there's different responsibilities. You're going to start with the basics. You're going to start with grinding, trimming, chopping, cleaning up, stocking, that kind of stuff. And then you're going to move on. And as you progress, year 1, year 2, and year 3, you're going to go on. You're going to be working in a cold room. It's cold. One of the things that I really try to tell people is, I know you go into the cute little butcher shop and there's somebody standing there behind the counter, and it's like today, like I'm in my office and they're working really hard. And I was just like, that needs to be in the back of the room at 38 degrees. I understand customer service and being able there to say, hi, how can I help you? So if you do process out of refrigeration, please know that there needs to be a strict HACCP plan in place to be able to track how long that product is out, what is the temperature of that product, and get it back into refrigeration to make sure it stays out of that danger zone. Okay, that was my little sidebar. So the different types of training programs. We mentioned a little bit about apprenticeship programs. We have a blended learning model program, self-paced learning, universities, and then also meat processors. So I'm just gonna share with you a little bit I'm gonna go through these a little bit, but before I move on, we're definitely gonna have Q&A at the end, but that was just a quick overview of different types of meat butchery jobs that are available. So if you're looking to get a job, or you're new, those would be the places that I would start to look for. So does anybody have any questions at this point? If not, we'll answer them at the end. I just thought I'd do a little pop in here if anybody's got any questions.
Michelle actually asked, Kari, how do you see robotics moving into the cutting space?
Well, they're here. We already have a lot of cutting machines. If you're talking about robotics, as far as 100% from automation is happening in every industry, and it's going to continue to automate our industry because of this very reason. We have a hard time finding people. Robotics, it's going to happen, but doesn't help the situation we're going through right now, where our processors and our farmers are waiting till 2022. I mean, as soon as you buy a cow, you've got to call and schedule your slaughter date right now. I mean, there's just no way. So I haven't had a lot of experience working with automation, other than like the meat cutting machines, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out. The portion machines, where you can go through and it cuts out there. So, but yeah, I hope it doesn't come too much, because that kind of defeats what I'm trying to sell you guys here. I don't mean sell in the real way. I just meant teach. All right. So an apprenticeship. So we talked about the length of time it usually goes. And, with the demand on chains, producers, local restaurants, it's a little bit of a hiccup right now. People are looking for high quality folks to work. And right now you're kind of at a disadvantage, because you might just be looking at the guy that's coming in off the street with his hat on and saying, hey, I need a job. And so how as an employer are you secure that that's going to be the right candidate? Yeah, you can obviously do the interview. Maybe there's a test. Maybe you do a stage where they kind of come on site for a couple weeks and see what they do. That's big in the restaurant industry. It's not as popular in the meat cutting industry, and there's a lot of liability. That's a little bit different with handling and producing raw meat than it is cutting up onions to see how fast you can chop a diced or a julienne onion. So if you can find an apprenticeship program, then it may vary from employer to employer based on their protocols. But in general, we want these folks to still learn. Again, most butchers are self-taught. There really wasn't a consistent way to train. The last meat cutting school that I remember, and was not that I remember it, but it was in 1972, was a Toledo meat cutting school. And the Toledo meat cutting school was a school that was actually a mail order, if you will. It was all, they would send you a pamphlet, you would study it, you would fill out your test, you'd mail your test in, the instructor would grade it, and then you would mail it back and they would find out if they passed or not. And so that really existed. And so that was kind of the blended model of the 70s. Now that program was run and put it together by Toledo Scale Company, and the Scale Company obviously had a vested interest in this. And so the Scale Company eventually closed that program. It also coincides with kind of the shift of moving the labor away from the restaurants and the grocery stores and moving it more to the production side. And then so it's inconsistent throughout the different markets. And then also a certification lends to the credibility. I get asked a lot, do I need a certification to be a butcher? And I always say check with your local food code, but generally there aren't any certificates out there to be a butcher. And a lot of it is self-taught through basically YouTube. So I really took it upon myself to take kind of the knowledge over the years and projects that I've worked on to develop a training program that I feel can help increase the credibility of our trade. So I apologize for this slide, but this is a blending learning model. So if you're looking to set up a training program within your organization, whether it's a grocery store, a restaurant, things that we want to look at is being able to, how do we reduce the cost of training? And it's through a blended learning model. So that could mean the old Toledo meat cutting school pamphlet that you get and you take it in, a proctor scores it, and then you go in and you learn the trade. That could be one way. Excuse me, you could accomplish that same thing through an online model. So you would have all your training on an online portal. They would learn, they would come to work, they would start to learn their basic cuts. They would start with a clerk program, learn to identify the different cuts, and then eventually they're going to learn how to start breaking these down in primals and subprimals. And then that's kind of the typical blended learning model. It's a lot like today, except for we don't have the computer stuff. You're just kind of learning from the person that's next door. So if you have a large company and you have multiple stores, multiple sites, Kari might teach different than Erica, and Erica might teach different than Rita, and and it goes on and on. So there's not that consistency of training. So this is our blended learning model. It's kind of a little bit of a both. And then how is all of this changed? Well, what I hope we can accomplish today is having this butcher talk, is being able to bring people from both sides, people looking for jobs, people that are trying to develop a new business, people that are just trying to learn what these jobs are, how many people do I need? And a lot has really changed, and it really happened with, I think, has got the exposure because of COVID. So obviously we're having these talks now because we all can't get at a convention and be in a room and shake hands and kiss babies and talk about how much we love meat. We can't do that right now. So now we've learned how to communicate with this kind of technology, which really helps too in that blended model, because then you can use these kind of technologies to help train your staff. social media. If you're looking for knowledge, there's all kinds of groups. I've now become a new user of the TikTok, and I'm really finding the TikTok kind of charming. It's usually non-threatening. Everybody's pretty chill. And they're just quick little 1-minute videos about how to do things. And the technology's there, and people are sharing information. Online learning has really exploded. I'm sure if anybody has a child in school right now, you've probably all frustrated with online learning. But that is definitely the way to bring on this new education. And also when, it's interesting because Erica had this in her slide, crowdsourced delivering, the Instacarts, the Postmates. So when you had your traditional butcher shop or your meat processor, the meat processor had to find its customers to produce the meat and sell it to. And then if you were a butcher shop or a retailer, then you had to go find your customers. But now with crowdsourcing, you don't have to try to get your customers necessarily to come in your door in the same fashion. Now you can get your customers to have somebody pick it up for you. So I feel like this technology is really going to help our local meat systems thrive. The demand for meat processing is continuing to rise, but we also need to be able to sell it, and we all need to sell it at a very fair price because it's expensive to buy and trade and sell meat. And so we all need to get our fair share in this steak, pun intended. So the model used to just be where we went from the cow and to the farm, to the knife to the job, or to the job to the knife. But now we have this section here with technology that we can, through the internet, through web-based training and knowledge, and then you can earn your certificates. So I'm really excited about that. So what is a learning management system? It's basically a tool, an interface, a white label. Students or employees can learn at their own pace. Think about the old way of training. You would do a manual and you put it all together, and then you'd send it out, and then you make copies, and then you ship it out, and then somebody'd have to go train, and then there would be a mistake, and then you'd have to resend out all the paperwork. Well, now with online learning tools, learning management tools, you can quickly make those changes, and it ripples through, your whole system. So you don't have that expense. I mean, you have the expense of the learning management system, but it's just a way to kind of reduce the training and implementation costs that tend to hinder getting some of these programs out there. So it's also, we did some research about, would this online tool work for training meat staff? Because my tactile brain thinks I have to touch it and feel it in order to make that connection. And I'm a very visual learner. So, but one thing that really came out through the research was that retailers and wholesale distributors thought that this was a way to promote and attract their staff within their chain, within their company. For example, a typical grocery store, people talk about changing careers 3 or 4 or 5 times. You can do that within a meat processor or a grocery store. You could be, you could start out as a bagger, you could become a butcher, you could be a baker, you could, so you can attract people and keep them in that same company where they can move around. And so being able to train and promote and get people to come into the meat department, a lot of times as a company, we don't do a great job of saying, hey, come over here, we still have a job for you. People just leave. So that popped out in the research, and I thought was really interesting. Back to that consistent training, and craft skills are still on the rise. We're seeing it more and more. We're hearing more about the drive to $15 an hour as a federal minimum wage. So it's going to happen, and either we increase price to meet the demand of the $15 an hour from a consumer perspective, or we have to buy our products a little differently, meaning we buy stuff that we need to do the work on. Instead of buying it, steak ready, like we were talking about those steak cutters, now you're just going to have to get it into a steakable format and then make the cuts. to try to make these numbers work. So I know the restaurant community has been struggling with the labor rates, and so now it's definitely going to factor into the meat world as well. So this is an example of a personal dashboard for learning. Your employee or your student would go in and they would have their own private portal. They would have their courses and catalogs and transcripts. The thing that's really important, you'll see here, there's the two different screens here, is being able to have a responsive design. So responsive design meaning that somebody can use their phone, then they can go to their tablet, and then they can switch over to a web-based application. And that training is consistent. So they can stop and start and pick up on any device. So if you're developing some kind of a training program like this, you want to look for words like that, that it's responsive and that you can, and most now are pretty turnkey that you can do that. Just something to think about there. Within a learning management system, you want to be able to keep people entertained. They want to learn. So you can have things like leaderboards and lessons and videos and study aids, gamification, puzzles to try to work with cut identification, trying to keep people in there. And, I like to say that for me, I did go to college, but I really wasn't the traditional arts and letters person. I wanted to be doing and touching things and making things work. And so I wanted to make sure that people understand that if you're going to put a program together, these people aren't normally used to sitting in front of a computer and getting their content. So, if you're going to invest in something like this, make it look good so it keeps their attention. Make sure that they're recognized with certifications and their efforts. If they are going to invest in a program on their own, consider a reimbursement program that you would pay your students back or your potential employees back for the trade of that, the cost, if any of their learning. They need to have a transcript. And again, back to this responsive design, it's all housed up in a cloud. And, in general, that's kind of what a learning management system is. And like I said, if you have kids, that you probably know all this by now. This is an example of a certificate that we actually give in our program, and students collect badges. So these badges are another kind of gamification and just a way to kind of work on that learning. I had a student one time, one badge didn't port right over in their portal and they got pretty upset. Like, where does my such and such badge? And they were right. I accidentally forgot to issue the badge. And so, they're into it. So it was nice. The portal will have some place where they could collect their badges. A portal will have an area where they can download their certificates. They're going to see where they're at in their completion of their courses. And then if you're on a supervisor role, you would also get reports with this kind of stuff. So, again, as you're going to develop this kind of program, those are kind of things to look at. It's also can be competency based as well, which is kind of a buzzword for learning right now. Meaning if you take algebra in one state, algebra is the same in the next state. It's a competency based. So I just wanted to kind of wrap this up a little bit, and I'm going to play a couple audio clips and hopefully you can hear them. So how are we going to fix all of these issues in meat supply, right? Local meat processing. We're all looking for staff. We all need employees. And I think we're in a really interesting position because oddly enough, a lot of this workforce doesn't exist, which means we have to create it. So we're either gonna start new, we're gonna take what used to work and make it better. But it really, in my opinion, has to be private, public kind of offering, a collective, like for a butchery school. So the state of Montana Meat Processors Association have been working on this problem for a while. Montana, big, vast, a lot different than the Northeast. But the Northeast has meat the Northeast has meat processors, but you got to get those people to drive there. And so how can we develop this? So Miles Community College has been out there looking to develop a meat processing program. And they wanted to create, you know, a beautiful meat lab, a meat school. That's what I want someday. And it just became too big of a project. And with this COVID thing, they were able to work with the Montana Farm Bureau, the Montana Meat Processors Association, and the local community college, and they were able to actually put this program into action. So they created this program, and it's a, you guys are kind of in my way here. I don't know, I can't read it. Anyway, it's a one-year certificate program, and they go through their online learning with the blended model, and they can take that online college course anywhere in the state. So they no longer have to get in their car and be close and tethered to the educational system. So now they go in, they log in, they get their curriculum, and then they partner and they go in and they get their hands on with the Montana meat processors that are part of the association that have signed up for this program. So it's really a unique, it's not unique, that's not the right word, but it's a way that they're trying to address this challenge. And so I wasn't able to get the clip, but I do have the audio. So I'm just gonna play this. It's just a couple minutes long, and then just to hear what she says. There's a lady said, it's kind of hard to hear.
She was super excited, and I was even more excited to talk to her because I learned that a program like this was something that they had already been working on, and in conjunction with the Montana Meat Processing Association and Brian's group. And we were very excited to have a meeting with the MCC president and others who've been working on this before. And and learned that the ball was rolling and just kind of helped get it rolling. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim to have her talk about the program. And we're going to let Brian talk more about the background on his end, and then we'll get on to a announcement. So take it away, Kim. Okay, so this has been probably, I think this is 4 years of trying to get a meat processing program here at MCC. Montana Meat Processors came to us and said, hey, this is something the industry needs. We need workers, we need a workforce. And, you know, it's one of those, it is a kind of an expensive program. CTE programs can be fairly expensive to get started at community colleges. So we applied for some grants, but were unsuccessful. But in 2020, we saw a pandemic arise, and people started getting concerned about where their meat comes from across the state or within the state, and that kind of put a big burden on a lot of our Montana meat processors. And they said, and Farm Bureau came to us and said, what can we do to help you get this program going? I'm like, well, we need kind of some startup money. And so it took a worldwide pandemic to get a program started here at the community college level. So the program is a 1-year certificate program, 29 hours. It is made up of 4 internships as well as some core credits built in there as well, and an intro to meat class and a food safety class. The program has been approved for financial aid. This is something big. It usually takes 6 months to get a program approved for federal financial aid. It took 3 days. So that just shows you how valuable or how it's driven across the nation that meat processing is now on the forefront of everybody's mind. So I'll pass it on to Brian.
So she's the gal at MCC that was starting to work on this, and you know, it was just what we were talking about. You know, this, for example, the student lives in Columbus. They don't have to come all the way into Miles City. You know, they can live at home, stay class, take the online courses, and then they can go on and you know, stay at home. I mean, in the Montana area and learn their skills. So this is Brian. He is.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Nicole, for hosting this. Yeah, it was 4 years ago that we started as meat processors, started visiting with each other about the future and the bleak picture without any employees. And without employees, none of us can expand our business and do more for the customers. And this last March, April, this last year has shown us that there are not enough we knew. Myself and a lot of the processors in the state have looked out to the beginning of 2022, and that's unprecedented for most of us. And it's sort of hard to accept that there is that big of a demand. We can't rest on our laurels, and the only way we can help that soften that demand is to be able to do more. And without additional employees, we can't do that. And our facility has a lot of semi-automated equipment, like a lot of facilities do. So one employee can get a lot more done. That we know that with more employees, we can get more done in most facilities. And we're really excited that this is finally coming to a head, and we're excited to be part of it.
And so what really also accelerated this was full disclosure, they're using our content that we've developed to facilitate this blended model with them. And so they had a very aggressive timeline, and they were in a position where, oh yeah, and we need a curriculum. And so they were right place, right time. So it's called a white label. So it looks like Miles Community College, and they go in, we do have our logo on the program, but I'm just really excited about this opportunity. I just think, getting the meat processing associations engaged, getting the community, the educational system, and bringing this together at a fair price for students too. Maybe they don't have to spend whatever it is for a full year of college, as you would in a traditional university setting or culinary school setting. And really moving into more of a certificate-based training is where a lot of schools are going, because culinary programs are struggling. And even so now, with the issues that we're having in the restaurant business. So being able to offer these certificate programs are going to provide workers. It's going to be able to create new business. We're going to be able to help, expand business. And, there's even talk about some of these folks sponsoring people that go through these programs and then sponsor them to become their own businesses. So it's a big undertaking. And I just thought, when Erica asked me to talk about this, I thought, wow, I have this great opportunity, and it's with the meat processors and the community. And so I just wanted to share, if you're looking to do something like that, what an opportunity. We have the infrastructure with our meat processors, because they have product, they have equipment, and they need workers and bodies and people that are wanting to learn. So if they're invested in taking the education, and I know hope is not a strategy, but then we hope that our churn rate definitely goes in the right direction, and we can actually hang on to these employees. So with that is my slides for tonight. And so I know we wanted to spend some time hopefully having some pretty good discussions here. So I will see here, stop sharing, and we're going to go back to our peeps here. Oh, there we go. And we'll, I guess somebody's going to take it from here.
Oh, yes, I can get my slides to work. Okay, so everybody, I am glad that we've made it this far in tonight's budget block talk. And this is kind of the open forum to allow us to have any time to ask questions for Kari. And we'll be monitoring the chat. If you feel that you would rather just voice yourself through your mic, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself at this point, and we can just open it for an open floor. We'll give it about 30, we got good 20 minutes. So if we want to keep it to about 20 minutes of just kind of asking questions and discussing anything that might be burning with you all, and then we'll just wrap it up afterwards. So I'll leave it to you guys. think from at least on the chat feature here, the iPhone user said about applying for a 1-year program and going to Canada to attend a course. I'm not sure if there's more to that question, but I think that might be directed towards you, Kari.
Is it in the chat? I can't see it.
Yeah. Can a foreigner apply for your 1-year program and go to Canada to attend the course?
Our particular program is 100% online. So if you were going to partner with somebody, you would need to get the hands-on practical experience with a meat processor or a grocery store. It's kind of hard for me to say, oh, take this chapter and oh, by the way, buy a 80-pound chuck and put it on your table and practice at home. So we hope that you can find that kind of partnership. But our particular program, you can be anywhere. We have students from China to Africa, Jamaica, Mexico, South America. So that's one good thing about online learning. It's international.
Jody asked, how does one get started opening a shop? Is it incredibly cost prohibitive? What are the best steps to get started?
A butcher shop or meat processing shop, the butcher shop is going to be easier, I guess, from a cost perspective. Meat processing is very expensive to get started. Most people, the big question comes about opening up a butcher shop is, do you have to be state inspected, USDA inspected? And I think a lot of people think because they're working with meat, you have to go under inspection. If you're buying from your meat processor who's already inspected, you can then buy that USDA inspected meat, bring it into your shop, follow the right, SOPs and HACCP plan, and you can convert that meat usually under all the local health codes. So the process is relatively normal for opening a business. I think I'm missing part of the question there besides, cost prohibitive. To open up a butcher shop, you're probably looking anywhere from $75,000 to $250,000 in equipment and space. That's not including the cost of a building. That's just kind of the infrastructure to go into the vanilla box. Those are kind of some pretty standard numbers. There's an organization called the Niche Meat Processors Association. It's a program that's run out of Oregon State. And if you go on their website for folks that are looking to open up a small processor or a large meat processing business, they have a lot of examples of spreadsheets of economics on what it would cost to do that. So it's, like I said, it's out of Oregon, the Niche Meat Processors Association. Okay.
Rachel asked, what do you suggest as the best way for a farmer to get more familiarity with your industry who sells all of their livestock direct to consumers?
Best way for a farmer to get familiar with the industry who sells. So what's the best way? I think I'm reading this question. Is the farmer wanting to create an on-farm butcher business? Do I have that correct? Is there somebody that wants to turn their mic off and ask me?
Yeah. So possibly in the future. Right now, we just direct market all of our meat. So literally the slide where you showed like the entire process of the cow and then the end result, I'm like the beginning and the end, but I want to get more familiar with the middle. And possibly maybe in the future, if we continue to grow, that would be something that I would look into, possibly doing our own cut floor.
Oh, so you need that experience, the physical experience. And where are you located? What state?
New Jersey.
New Jersey? Well, I'm sure there's some people that would love to bring you in their shop and hire you and give you some experience. So if anybody knows here. But really
I gotta feed all those animals and stuff too. So
no, that goes back to online learning. So so again, online programs, I can just talk briefly about ours, is that it starts from 2/4 of a beef, a side of beef. It goes through the primals, the subprimals, really learning all those steps. So if you're thinking that you really need to learn the physical side of it and do it because you're a visual learner and you need that connection, you could try to apprentice. But the online side is the ability to kind of watch all that. And there's videos and photos and charts and graphs and the NAMP numbers, and I don't know what they call themselves now. I apologize. Their name switched so many times I couldn't keep up with them. So it just really is a deep dive into understanding about what all the cuts are, where they come from, what is the different labeling, what's organic, what's natural, what's kosher, what's halal, kind of getting into those things. And then the hands-on experience and the speed just comes with, getting in there and working with a knife and doing it. So, but it sounds like you're going to grow into it. So.
Yeah, that's a little ways off. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on that endeavor. We would love for you to open up another processing plant. We need more of them. All right. What else we got here?
I don't think we have anything. Any questions have gone on since. Anybody is welcome to turn off their mic if you have a burning question that you just don't feel like typing. I know I'm not a huge typer, so you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask away.
Do you list your program for? What was that? Do you list your program on current openings? Do we have a job board? I think that's what they're asking. We are going to be opening that up. Right now, if we have somebody that's looking for, we can send something out to our students. We have approximately right now 270 students that have gone or are actively on the program right now. So if people are willing to locate and move, there are jobs out there. But usually they're going to be in some town in Minnesota that you may not have heard of, or someplace in East Texas. And a lot of the rural areas are growing more meat processing businesses. And those are the kind of people that, and they're good jobs. I mean, these are $50, $60, $70, $75,000 a year jobs. These people are willing to invest and pay people. Another area, I'm talking to a guy and he's putting together a program where they're going to use some online learning tools to help people who have been paroled from the correctional facilities, being able to give those skills, another workforce, that you can try to get people in. To meat cutters. So yes, one, if you have a job that you would like us to send it out to somebody, you can let us know. Kari, today's meat cutter needs to do so much more than cut. There's HACCP, but also, yeah. So Michelle's asking about not only is there the cutting meat process, is like, how do I handle HACCP and sanitation and audits? I don't know about the leadership part. I'm kidding. But I'm trying to be careful here. In our particular course, we cover like 36,000 feet. We want to make sure that if you're going to be in the meat business, that you understand that there are things called standard operating procedures and that you have to follow them. We talk about what is HACCP, hazardous analysis critical control points. We talk about what those are and give a very basic structure of kind of why that is important. Sanitation, refrigeration, we talk about that, but I always defer to follow your.
Oh. think I unmuted you.
You muted me. Is that like the new yank?
You're not gonna unmute everybody so they can talk. Sorry about that.
Oh goodness. So yeah, passing the audits, I don't really talk about that so much, but again, if you are going to open up a butcher shop or a meat processing facility and you're not familiar with HACCP or SOPs, it's really important to partner with somebody that knows that, because it can be scary, but it's really simple, but it just it can be really overwhelming. So if that's one of the things that you're trying to tackle with your business, I would be something that I would hire out and have them do it, especially if you're
sure I understand.
See, she doesn't understand. I would definitely hire that kind of work out, especially if you're working with different municipalities and if you're doing cryovac or anything like that. Okay. Looks like there's another great job board somebody posted. What are the characteristics of the most successful processors and the most meat cutting shops? Diversity. What's the leading characteristics in the most successful processors and most successful meat cutting shops? Longevity, reputation is huge. Getting started, it's transparency. It's in today's butcher shop, when we had our butcher shop, we were a little different. We also had an ice cream parlor, so that was kind of fun. But today's butcher shop is a little bit more. You're talking from, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name. I apologize, but from Jersey, right? You have a lot of people, where you're going to be in there. So it's definitely that's the butcher shop. And you'll see this in a lot of rural markets where they don't just do meat, they're doing the sausages and the stock and the soup and the sandwiches and, being able to kind of provide that offer. So from a meat cutting shop, meaning I think butcher shop, that's what's really important. From a meat purveyor, a meat processor, quality, it's really what your customer is. I mean, quality doesn't mean expensive. It just means quality to that customer. So, if you're selling to schools, if you're selling to restaurants, it's a different customer. So it's just trying to be that and just being who you are. Don't try to do too much because you'll get in over your skis. I don't know if I answered that. I don't know if you want characteristics. I think that's kind of good.
I have a question from Ron. What's the best way to determine the demographic your area would have that you'd have to go after? Oh, sorry. Samantha. What's the best way to determine the demographic your area would have that you can go after? Sorry.
Data I would get with your local, what are they called? Oh, goodness gracious. It's the community business. What are they called?
It's an SBDC, small
There
business.
you go. Yes, small business. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. I was like, why is my mind slipping here? Yes, and you can get data. So, if you needed to figure out, what your demographics are, if your business is going to be, I want to sell, and I'm making this kind of up, dry aged Wagyu local, right? That's going to be a very high-end customer versus if you're buying no roll ribeyes that you're slicing real thin for quick steak sandwiches. So I would probably reverse it and really dig deep into what kind of business I would like to have. And then from there, you need to look for like-minded businesses. So if you're looking for the quick ribeye steak sandwich place, you want to look for an area that has like businesses because they're going to have similar customers. If you're wanting that high-end dry aged, you're going to go next to the fancy coffee shop and the Whole Foods and things like that. So Stake out, look at your competition. I didn't mean stake on purpose, but look for your competition, who you think your competition might be. What are they carrying? Because I'm a recovering retailer, I always look at the number of cash registers and how many people are handling the money. Because if you are going to open up a meat shop, labor is a big deal. It's a very high intense labor. And so you're going to have to pay people and you're going to need them. So that's another challenge on why the industry kind of struggles a bit, is because of that dichotomy, I guess, trying to balance that. So those are kind of the tricks that I look for. But yes, once you get to that, once you kind of figure out what your business is, get with the small business development folks, and they can help you with local data and things of that nature. So there you go.
There was a question earlier that we kind of threw from Michelle. She asked, today's meat cutters need to do so much more than cut meat. There's HACCP, but also sanitation, passing audits, and leadership. How are you tackling that?
I think we got that one.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it. Again, just talking about that, there's a lot to handle, and basically recapping that those are kind of some of the skills that I would farm out, or try to find standard ones that might exist somewhere. You know, sometimes people might give you a set to get you started, that kind of thing. What are some ideas you have for farmers to add value to our product? So this is from Jody, and her question: what are some of the ideas you have for farmers to add value to our product? Jody, do you do any value add products now? Yes.
So
No?
I use
Oh.
Smuckers in Mount Joy here in Pennsylvania, and they do make sticks and jerky for us, and we do get the individually packed roast steaks, and I retail them to both restaurants and farmers markets, and do a monthly CSA pickup right now. Those are my my 3 outlets for the most part. The sticks and jerky are really super popular. I'm just trying to figure out, like, right now I'm selling out of product, thanks COVID, good and or bad. But if we grow the farm business and I start raising more animals, how do I add value and continue to grow the business?
One way to add value is to, I call it tricking out the carcass, is making sure that your meat processor is giving you, and sometimes meat processors get mad at me for saying this, but you know, getting all the value cuts that you can. So, you know, we used to sell cuts by how to cook them. And then, so you would have multi-muscle cuts. And so you might have, I'm going to use the flat iron as example, second most tender muscle, but it's buried in the shoulder around all these other muscles, and it's a pain to kind of dig out. So if you have that kind of relationship with a processor that can give you those cuts, that's huge, because those are kind of the low-hanging fruits. So if you're getting all of those cuts, the other area that's probably going to be the drag, and I'm assuming we're talking cattle, is the round. So the leg on the animal is very lean. And so in Chicago, we have this thing called Italian beef. And so, you know, being able to have this pre-cooked, sliced thin roast that you can drop in an au jus, and then you put in a hot bun, dip it with your jardinard, and then there you go. That's a big one. So just really trying to, a hot dog. And then you have to find processors that'll make this stuff for you. Not all meat processors have value add rooms. There needs to be like a firewall in between there. So getting the right cuts, jerky, sticks. If you're going to do any smoking, if you're going to offer like a pre-cooked kind of option, stock, bone broth, the moo, you got to sell that moo somehow. We got to figure that one out. Those are some things that just come off the top. What's
It's
the,
really unfortunate. There's only one tail per steer. I mean, I could sell oxtail all day, but only one tail per steer. So
right? Oxtails, the tongue's probably a big one. Do you sell the hearts too? I mean, are you doing the whole, obviously, the heart
I
and the
do.
kidney? Mhm,
Yep.
liver?
I don't do kidney right now. It's just
Okay,
liver,
yeah,
heart, tongue.
yeah.
Trying to
Mhm.
think what else. I know liver, heart, and tongue.
Yeah, so those would be some of the ways. And then, you know, of course, if you do have a good partner, a processor that's doing the value add, they might have options for you as well. Like I said, brisket, smoking the sirloin tip, the quadricep, a beef quadricep like you would a brisket is really kind of interesting. And you can, the vastus lateralis actually shreds kind of like chuck in a brisket, which is one of the muscles in the quadricep, actually shreds, which is really interesting because it's part of that leg that we're trying to add value to. So smoking that would be good. So, okay, any more questions?
One more.
You feel, go ahead.
Do you feel claims on products worth the hassle of the preparations and approvals?
Well, what kind of claims are you making? You know, if this question is somebody that is trying to do
Organic and sugar-free?
organic, oh goodness. I think what the question is there can you, is there truth in labeling? Can, you know, is it worth all that, right? To go through the labeling practice. The USDA organic label has a very strict protocol. I know some folks really like that USDA program. Some people do not. I mean, for me, what's more important is if I'm a farmer and I'm raising my animals, and if I choose to raise them organically, and I can communicate that to my customer, for me, I don't know if I need to go through that whole process of getting certified organic. You can't market your product that way if you don't get that seal, if you will. But for me, I would just market how I raise the animals. Sugar-free, if all the different value add and byproducts, and gosh, I don't know how to answer that any better than this. You know, it's just a step we got to take. We've got to know what our ingredients are. We have to know who our suppliers are. And then we've got to get all the claims. All right. Okay. Sounds good. All right.
I think that's all the questions that we have. So I appreciate all of the great discussion that we had over the last hour and 15 minutes. Just wanted to kind of round out the hour with just a wrap up of tonight. And if my slides work, we'd like to thank you for joining tonight. And to follow up, if you all can check out the chat feature right now, there is a link for our follow-up survey that we would love for you to fill out. There is a secret surprise for those of you that stayed. If you fill out our survey, what we would like is for you to provide us your address, and that is just going to be used strictly for this event, so we can send you a little goodie bag, as well as those that enter in for the survey and you fill it out to its completion. One of you will be drawn out for an additional box that will have some butcher goodies in it. So some cool stuff like a butcher's knife, some a cut apron, and butcher's glove. So I mean, definitely some things that are very useful in the trade, and just a little thank you for attending this talk tonight. Do you have anything else to add, Kari, before we go tonight?
No, I'm good. If you guys are interested in learning more about what we do, I'm around. So give me a shout out. I'd love to chat with you some more. So.
Well, we thank everyone for attending tonight, and we hope that we hope that this was a very educational and just a really cool way to collaborate with one another. And we hope to look forward to providing more of these talks for you soon. Thank you all. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Thank you.